Now, as a COVID inquiry continues, more and more is revealed about the chaotic scenes in government during the COVID era.
Yes, the former Home Secretary, Dame Priti Patel, told the inquiry that says that coronavirus laws were highly confusing and complex, both for the police and the public, and that the £10,000 fines were disproportionate.
Well, Dame Patel also made it clear to the inquiry that Matt Hancock's Department for Health and Social Care was responsible for COVID laws, saying the Home Office had very little say in it all.
Well, we're joined now by the former Metropolitan Police Detective, Peter Bleksley. It's lovely to see you. Hello.
Thank you.
It made life very difficult for the police, actually, didn't it, by the sound of it?
Oh, it certainly did. And I had a degree of sympathy for the police because they were having to operate with rushed legislation. And of course, rushed legislation is so often the wrong legislation. To think of an example, take the Dangerous Dogs Act of some years ago that was hurriedly brought in and turned out to be a bit of a nightmare for the police to work with. And this was the same with the COVID legislation. And so my sympathy only stretched so far because, of course, what made it additionally challenging for the police was the growing divide between the public and the police that had been created by the dismantling of neighbourhood policing, that Bobby on the beat, the copper that everybody knew. If we'd had that in place, it would have been easier for that connect between the public and the police.
But is there a sense, though, that the police were... It's how you interpret these things, isn't it, often in these situations? And when you had these sort of high-profile cases of two ladies sat in a bench in a park being arrested, is that the police being overzealous?
Oh, undoubtedly so. And of course, certain police officers would love the opportunity to be a bit more authoritarian than they would be at other times. I think there was a lack of police leadership in terms of setting the tone. I don't think they really kind of read the mentality and the mindset of the nation because people overwhelmingly were abiding by the legislation. People were staying in their homes. People were abiding by the rules. But there was an element of heavy-handedness that might have been brought out of that disconnect that I spoke about.
Yeah, I mean, do you remember there was even a situation where there was one lone person on a beach and another person who just went hiking on the moors, and they were both fined, I think, or arrested or something very embarrassing for the police. Who do you blame then? Is it the police, the leaders of the police, or is it the politicians for simply not explaining what they wanted properly?
Well, I would cut all of them a certain degree of slack. But in terms of setting the tone, allowing police officers or instructing police officers how to act, how to be appropriate, how to deal with this new rushed legislation that nobody had any experience of, then the responsibility for that has to lie with the police chiefs at the top, who essentially live a life of disconnected from the public, who sit in their ivory corridors of power, setting the agenda, speaking with their like-minded, university-educated, intellectual elite of policing as they see themselves, with so far removed from the public, their needs, their desires and their wishes.
All right, let's tie this into something which is obviously very topical at the moment. In terms of this row, in effect, between the Metropolitan Police and the Home Secretary, and she's being hammered by it in the papers this morning, is it right that she's saying or being critical of the police in the way that she is, or should the police, and Mark Rowley, be left to interpret this themselves?
Well, let's just look about inconsistencies in policing in recent months, if we may. Under the leadership of Sir Mark Rowley at the Met, they, for weeks, allowed Just Stop Oil protesters to lay in the road, glue themselves to the road and cause havoc with traffic while the police stood idly by. They've changed their tactics now, but just remember how it was a few months ago. Then let's throw into the mix the coronation of King Charles III, when suddenly there was the most draconian policing you could possibly imagine, and people that had been in discussions with the police in the days and weeks leading up to the coronation turned up to do what they told the police they were going to do and found themselves arrested. You see, it's inconsistencies in policing.
Yeah, but you just said a minute ago that the police should read the room when they attend some sort of incident, they should be able to read the room. And sometimes they get it wrong, and they can't always get it right, can they?
No, but they got it repeatedly wrong with Just Stop Oil, as I've just alluded to. And with regards to the coronation, I think many people liked the fact that that event went without a hitch almost, and that the police were very firm, and that they dealt with protesters or would-be protesters like many viewers and readers and listeners, I'm sure, would like the police to act. But then we see it being completely different. We fast forward to the pro-Palestine marches, and we see inaction by the police in many regards when there are clearly people breaking the law. Now, I understand sometimes it's very difficult to arrest somebody from among a mass of 100,000 people, and you might make a bad situation worse. But why isn't that explained? Why aren't we informed properly by senior police officers that the public can engage with, rather than people in their uniforms talking down the camera and frankly looking like an AI robot?
So if you had to stand behind one or the other, you'd stand behind Suella Braverman, would you, on this one?
There are inconsistencies within policing, undoubtedly so. But if we talk about inconsistencies, what was absolutely staggering yesterday was listening to the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, talking about the importance of operational independence of the police. Well, there speaks a London Mayor who has interfered in the operations of police just about more than any other elected politician.
But the way you discuss it makes it sound as though it's almost an impossible problem to solve.
It's not. If only senior police officers would understand that, generally speaking, ideologically speaking, politicians of whatever persuasion hate the police. So just have that as your mindset. Of course they do. Ministers will come on the television and the radio and talk about supporting the police and doing a great job and all of that. But if you look at the political ideology of politicians, whether they come from left or right of the spectrum, to actually like and want and support an authoritarian body that enforces the law doesn't really sit with that political ideology. So if these senior police officers who get seduced by politicians and love prowling the corridors of power at Westminster, if they just realise that at the end of the day, the politicians will throw you under the bus at any opportunity, they don't like you, so when you talk about operational independence, remain independent, keep them at an arm's length, deal with them as fewer times as you possibly have to, and be there for the public. Give the police consistent policing, do what the public want, which is patrol the streets, prevent crime, investigate crime properly and professionally when it happens, and lock up bad people.
Every time you come on, I think you should take the top job, Peter. So, you tell it how it is.
Thank you.
We'll see you a little bit later on, I think. Thanks very much indeed.
Phew.